In our politics lead, the fate of more than 2,000 migrant kids separated from their families by the U.S. government is still unclear after President Trump's 180 on this policy. Joining me now is someone who had to deal with an immigration crisis himself, former Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson, who held that role for 4 years under President Obama. First of all, just clear something up for me, because we've heard from this administration and from fact checkers that there were family separations that happened under the Obama administration and the Bush administration.
Jake, there was no policy or practice, at least on my watch, to separate women, parents from their children.
There might be individual cases of it?
There were, I'm sure, individual cases for reasons of health or safety, but we did not have that policy or practice, and it's not something I would have adopted. It's not something I would have permitted.
So your successor, Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, enacted this policy along with the Attorney General Jeff Sessions, zero tolerance, meaning anybody crossing the border illegally, whether they're seeking asylum or just seeking entry illegally, gets prosecuted, and as that happens, they all get separated from their children. What was your response when you heard that?
Well, first, the actual policy and the messaging of the policy has been a moving target. But what appears to have been the case up until yesterday was that the Department of Justice had adopted a zero tolerance policy where migrants would be prosecuted criminally in federal district court. And once the migrant is taken into Department of Justice custody, if the migrant had a child with him or her, that child would have to be separated because you can't bring a child into pretrial detention. And so it was an obvious conscious policy choice to make, knowing full well that the child would be separated if you choose to prosecute the parent.
But you never did that as a policy, the Obama administration. There's been reports
Correct.
about how you discussed it, you talked about it,
That is correct.
to deter people from coming across the border illegally. President Obama deported more undocumented immigrants than any other president, I think.
To be clear, just on my watch, 3 years, we deported, removed, or repatriated about 1 million people. And particularly during the spike in 2014, when we had the rise in the families, I encouraged our Border Patrol, our immigration enforcement people to bring forth every legally available idea. And so I encouraged Tom Homan and Kevin McAleenan to bring us the various options.
And one idea was prosecute everyone, separate kids from their parents, and you didn't do it. Why?
First of all, I didn't believe it was right. I spent enough time on the border myself talking to parents, kids, and it's not something that I could envision ever doing, pulling a child away from its mother. When you get to the border, you literally see mothers clinging to their children who have carried them all the way from Central America. So it's not something I could do. It's not something I could ask a Border Patrol agent or an immigration enforcement person to do, and it's not something I could float as a deterrent.
So now Secretary Nielsen has to, or the Secretary of Health and Human Services, whoever, somebody has to bring these kids back to their parents. That's what the administration says it's going to do. That's what Ivanka Trump is tweeting should happen. Melania Trump is saying. How do you do that? I mean, do they even have a record of this kid is there and this kid is there and their parents are here and here? Do they know where everybody is?
I don't know the answer to that question, Jake, because this policy was put in place in such a hurry. It's already apparent that not all of the angles and implications were thought through before the Attorney General announced this zero tolerance policy. I agree that the government here has some obligation to try to reunite the children from their parents. How they're going to do that, I couldn't really tell you, because it's not something we had to deal with in the prior administration.
And what you had to deal with was a huge humanitarian crisis of unaccompanied children, tens of thousands crossing the border.
And families.
And families. And of course, the continued undocumented immigration, illegal immigration crisis. Yeah. I want to ask you, because there was a Senate report in January 2016 and also an ACLU report in May of this year saying that a number of these children, unaccompanied children, were either released into the hands of human traffickers because of incompetence by the Obama administration or abused by Custom and Border Patrol agents. Did you know about reports like that when you were secretary?
I am aware of the recent ACLU report. There was a similar set of allegations while I was in office. I directed our Inspector General to investigate them, and I recall that most of the allegations came back unsubstantiated, if not all of them. But clearly, these are very serious allegations, and they deserve to be treated seriously. And I hope that the current DHS is taking another look at investigating these allegations to see whether there's any type of pattern of abuse that needs to be addressed current day, certainly.
Well, I appreciate your coming here because we can't get the current Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security here, so I appreciate the predecessor coming in answering some of these tough questions. Secretary Jeh Johnson, thanks so much.
Thanks.